welcome to everyone who's here as on your wonderful Sunday to be part of this NENA conference here. And I'd like to also acknowledge to the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm meeting with you, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to thank Nick for, like as Megan said, for that amazing work that you've been doing in this space for a really long time, but particularly just recently for bringing together that incredible study that can then give voice to all the things that that we've been talking about. We knew this, but having it in the form that you've made it now makes it so much more powerful, and for us able to, like, I don't know how many times I've already referred to your study to give extra evidence and background to the work that I've been doing, not just here in Australia, but around the world as well. So thank you, Nick, and to all your team for making that happen. And I'm busy working to help mentor people too, to be those people who can be teachers within those local networks. And that's kind of part of this talk, is about how permaculture is myceliating. And really what I mean by that is that throughout COVID and even before, permaculture has been rippling out across the globe. I mean, permaculture started in Australia, gosh, about 40 years ago, and now it's in at least 170 odd countries. It's in villages everywhere. Just the other night, I was on a call, zooming in. It was 11 o'clock here, and I was zooming into a garden in the middle of a Kenyan village. And they had a little laptop set up in the middle of this food forest, a permaculture garden. I was hearing a Maasai woman tell me how permaculture is going to be the thing that actually helps them to survive. And, so it's everywhere, but it's not this big system, a hierarchy that's gone out. It's people to people, idea to idea, connections. It's this relational process that's happening. And it spreads because it makes sense. It spreads because it helps, it is contextualized in a local context. It enables people to respond to what they see in front of them and to be able to design solutions that relate to where they are. So essentially, permaculture is about one planet living. What does that mean in all of its sense? So, I mean, if you look at the ecological footprint studies that have been done, it shows that if everyone lived like a typical Australian, we'd need 4 Earths. We only have one. What does that life look like? What does it mean to live a one planet life? And the best thing I can find is the permaculture model of which has these ethics that underpin it: earth care, people care, and fair share. Very locally based, local food systems, local economic systems, low energy, and it not just about sustainability either. It's about regeneration. So how can we regenerate the soils? How can we regenerate the forests? How can we regenerate our local communities? And these are the kind of strategies that are rippling out and making sense to Maasai women in the middle of Kenyan villages, because it is, they look around them and they say, well, I don't really see many options. My land is degraded. There's either floods or there's droughts. I don't have work. And one of the things that's really motivated me this year too is hearing about how the World Food Programme talking about 265 million people are on the brink of starvation by the end of this year. And what Nick was talking about with dignity and the access to food, a lot of the refugees that we work with in many parts of the world with permaculture are saying, well, there's food rations, but did you know that since COVID, those food rations from the United Nations have been cut by more than half? So we just get a small amount of beans and rice, and that most of what reaches us has already been funneled off in different directions. What we get is moldy beans and rice that we have to wash and dry. And so from a dignity perspective, actually surrounding themselves in food gardens that gives them access on a daily basis to this is deeply about fair share and people care, and addressing human need where the need is so great. And so essentially it's about resilience, building resilience and regeneration, and creating healthy human habitats. And in actually creating healthy human habitats, restoring the land and ecosystems. As Nick said, you know, our current food system has been eroding the basis on which life can exist. And so our task is to regenerate that and regenerate it from a food perspective. And coming back to home gardens, like my greatest love is being able to just go out straight into the garden, straight around me, and be able to look and see what's available today, and to take the kids out and say, okay, harvest me what you find, and we can eat from that. And it is actually remarkable how little money you need when you start to eat in this way. And so when you have situations where people have lost their jobs, where they're home-based, where there's, you know, we're in an economic crisis as well as a health crisis, as well as an ecological crisis, actually regenerating or building home gardens in this way is kind of a radical approach to building real and lasting security for people. And also this everyday access to food. And Nick talked about this too, about how that it's different type of food, because it's packed with nutrient density and vitality. And you know, kale is not kale. You know, if you get a kale that's come from a chemically farmed environment, transported, stored, refrigerated, as opposed to a leaf that you get straight from your garden, it's a completely different type of food, and it nourishes our bodies and nourishes our minds completely differently as well. There's an intense sense of well-being that comes from having a direct connection to food and a relocalization of our food system. And so a key part of this is relocalizing and heading out into our commons. And I know this has been challenging of late, being able to access the commons, but community gardens, city farms, street tree planting, verge gardening, rooftop gardening, like start to put on those kind of vegetable or garden lenses and walk around the neighborhood and see where that can happen. Take the food into the streets. Take your dining table out into the street and start sharing a feast. Share food across the fence. Find places in the corners of wherever you can to start actually growing food, because it's not actually just the growing of food that happens then, it's the growing of community. And that's where a huge amount of the well-being takes place. And also thinking about how in doing that, you're also gardening for nature. Part of where I live in an eco-village up in Queensland, in southeast Queensland. And part of what I design in my garden is that actually it's as much for the birds and the bees and the butterflies and the kangaroos and the wallabies and the platypus and the turtles and all of the other species that exist, as much as it is for me. Because when we enter into degraded landscapes, a really important part of regenerating the ecological system is thinking about not just what it is for me, how much food can I get, what's my yield. It is about regenerating an ecosystem and a habitat, and a healthy human habitat is one that is integrated and has space for all life to flourish, because that's when we're able to flourish too. And I spend a lot of time too doing walkabouts around the landscape with local elders, and this is Warunga. And he spends a lot of time out with me in the garden talking about all the different types of plants and medicinal uses and different edible weeds even, or different ways to use all the trees that are there. And he talks about how your garden is your supermarket. And so he's been taking permaculture out into, he goes on adventures out into he goes walkabout into the centre of Australia, and he packs up his bus with tools and with seeds and materials, and helps local communities to get more gardens happening there too. And so really exploring ways to integrate bush tucker and localized food systems that help to build the health of communities there, and really look at what we're calling a cultivated ecology. So it's not like rows and rows of gardens over here, and then nature over here, and then people over here. How can we bring those things all back together again in a regenerative way? And this is what Wurrunga thinks is the brilliant part of permaculture and how it relates to Indigenous cultures. And also I work with a number of different communities around the world, and this is Happy Farms at Plum Village, a place that was started by Thich Nhat Hanh. And he has these happy farms, and they're all now starting to integrate permaculture ways of thinking in there too, to really look at how to take their spiritual practice and make that come through their farming and their gardening, and really looking at how to think about transforming any waste in the system back into something that then nourishes them. And so the beauty of being able to weave permaculture through working with Indigenous communities, through spiritual communities, through eco-village communities, through urban environments, and into communities like here in Kenya, where a few years ago I took my daughter, who's in the front there, and my son. They were 10 and 12 at the time, and we went there to work with women's farms, with orphanages, with permaculture programs in various parts. And it was an incredibly inspiring thing, particularly for my children, I think, to experience actually what is hunger, what is regeneration, what is the impact of colonization on various parts of the world, and to see it firsthand. They'd heard me banging on about it all the time, but to actually witness it and see it firsthand, what that all really meant, was transformative. And so Maya and a few friends of hers started up something called Perma Youth. Now, Perma Youth is a global network of young people around the world who connect every week to explore ways that permaculture can help young people address the things that are going on in the world. There's massive amounts of eco-anxiety in young people. And this started after all the Greta campaigns, and a lot of kids were coming home and saying, but what do I do now? Being out there on the streets and calling for change and not seeing change happening, but wanting to find ways to actually be positive, practical activists that they're calling practivists. So this is one of the little local hubs, but they talk every week with groups in refugee camps. So this is a group in Ramwanja refugee camp in Uganda. And so they have pen pals, they learn together, they make films together, they share songs, they talk about different plants. It's this incredible exchange of knowledge and ideas. And Bemariki, who's there, is actually their teacher and mentor, and we have a mentors network around the world. And these mentors are then sharing with other people. And so it continues to ripple out. So this is Sakina, who's in another refugee camp, Kakuma, which has 200,000 people living in this refugee camp in the desert. And so she talks about how permaculture is the knowledge we need for a future, for hope. And she talks about how so many young people are just devastated by depression of being stuck in these camps for well over a decade. Now, she's been in this camp for over a decade herself, and a lot of kids are grown up there. There's no opportunities there. So permaculture is offering this opportunity. And part of what this is too is uncoupling from the food system that exists. And it relates often to actually having the means to be able to grow food, which have been taken away. The means to be able to access land, to access the knowledge and the information to be able to do it this way, to be able to have the local seeds that can be saved and shared. And so Vandana Shiva talks about the beauty of the seed is that out of one, you can get millions. And that's an economics of abundance. So rather than getting one hybrid seed, planting it, and then it's gone, you plant one lettuce seed, you'll get 10,000 seeds when you save that. It's this incredible abundance. So when you take that away from people, it's actually taking away sovereignty. It's taking away the rights to have control of one's own food system. So we've lost so much of the diversity over the years. So a big part of the work that we're doing in permaculture is helping to create seed networks, and it's part of a gift economy. So we just exchange and share and transfer them around, and you can have plant materials or seed materials that enable people to do this. And so Van Damme also talks about in nature's economy, the currency is not money, it's life. And if you think about a seed, it's a living thing. It's alive. It's just waiting for that potential moment. You know, the seed is an incredible source of abundance. And so when we work in the refugee camps, we're working with young people like these kids. So these girls flanking their little brother here are fierce new permaculture educators who are going out into their community, calling themselves permaculture ambassadors, helping to transform local communities. They take seeds, they take plants, and they go and help get gardens happening in their neighborhood. And so the teachers that we're working with are now teaching young people, and then they're realizing they don't have enough because the young people are so keen in seeing this. So now we're starting to teach teachers. I'm not. Sakina on the left is, and she's going out and teaching a whole group of young people who can then go out and teach more young people. And the guy in the middle with the big beaming smile at the bottom there, this is Somali. And Somali joins in on our Perma Youth meetings every time. And he's actually a musician, and he's writing songs to talk about permaculture. And so this is looking at ways of, rather than just sharing information or facts or ideas, he's taking it and embedding it into the heart of the culture and finding the ways to express it in a way that will be taken up and make sense. And just, you know, it's like, and the songs he's writing are like earworms. They just go round and round in your head. I've been sharing them around the world. We actually were able to submit it to a film and music competition, and he won this global competition. So we're now working to help him create a music studio so that he can be with his friends actually making permaculture songs in Swahili, which can then be able to be just take permaculture ideas and run them even further, because it's radical over there too, because over there it's actually illegal to sell and trade seeds. So they're not going to sell them, they're just going to distribute them. The only education that's given around farming is around chemicals and growing monocultures. And so this is radical. It's about enabling people to take control back in their lives when they have absolutely when they're stuck in refugee camps. And so part of too what the Perma Youth are doing in helping to ripple out all this is connecting all these dots and then doing cross-cultural and cross-generational events once a month. And they, so far they've had 30 different countries joining them on these festivals. So they're just short, like a 90-minute session. They find someone who's kind of like an expert in the field. They interview them. They get music and poetry and art and film and garden tours. And then they beam this out across the world and get to have conversations. You know, just imagine being 12 and being able to have conversations with kids in all different parts of the world about these things that matter. My daughter, this is Maya here in the middle of the festival, host here. She now homeschools. She was at school and she said, Mum, you know, nothing at school is being talked about that even matters. No one's even talking about climate change. No one's even talking about regenerative farming. We go in to talk about, you know, agriculture, but it's about the old system. My geography teacher doesn't even believe that climate change exists. And so when she asked to be homeschooled, it was like, yes, okay, that's absolutely fine. We need to be exploring and learning about things that really matter right now. And that's what a lot of young people are feeling. So this network is about connecting up people who kind of get that and really want to make a difference in the world, but felt powerless to do that. Whereas now they have a voice and they're connecting. So people like David Holmgren have joined them. Costa Georgiou just spent an hour with them. They're connecting with people, elders in various parts of the world. So this is the one that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So if you know of young people, please let them know about it. Permayouth.org, you can sign up for free and it's online. It's just 90 minutes. And then if you feel like donating for your young people to be part of this, all of the money goes directly to the refugee programs. And so these are some of the people that are recipients. Sorry, I just noticed that my timer
I was just about to.
Yeah. So I saw 10 minutes, but it was saying 10:41. Sorry. I'll wrap up now and just say that all the money that we donate goes directly to the refugees and to women's groups and to buy women's farms. We also have a whole lot of masterclasses that are available for you to access free. I'll just go to the links. We talk with people like David Holmgren. We have podcasts that goes out connecting all of this. So all of this stuff is available for free, and you can get that through our permaculturelife.com. And our key goal is really about teaching permaculture teachers. So these are some of the links there. Permayouth.org. The registered charity that we run to support all these programs is Ethos Foundation, org.org.au. And yeah, sorry, Jorge, that's my mistake. Thank you for listening, and I'll hand it over to you, Jorge.